Start.
Mrs. Parker?
Way to start.
Bang the gavel. We don't have. Okay, now we can
All right.
start the sheriff.
You can start now. Mike's here.
Okay.
I'd like to call this morning's meeting of the Criminal Justice Committee to order. Roll call, please.
Mr. Byrne,
Present.
Mr. Hess, Mr. Washington, Mr. Legess, Mr. Stauffenberg, Mr. Vickery, Mr. Tholen, Mr. McConnell, Mr. Scott, Mr. Snipes, Mr. Seroy, Mr. Einfeld, Ms. Evans, Mr. Payton, Ms. Dunbar, Ms. Parker, Mr. Fairfield, Mr. Wheeler, Mr. Lear. We have a quorum.
Thank you. I'd like to take a moment, have a moment of silence for the fallen commander in Chicago, along with all the other fallen officers this past month or so, and also keep committee member Michael Legess also in your thoughts. So, moment of silence, please. Thank you. I have no public commentary. Need approval, a motion to approve the minutes from December 13th, 2017. Mr. Seroy, seconded by Mr. Vickery. Voice vote. All in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. No chief judge. No circuit clerk, but we'll make the motion to combine and approve the monthly report. Two monthly reports. In the motion. Mr. Seroy, seconded by Mr. Payton. All in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. No public defender. Need to make a motion to approve his two monthly reports. Motion to combine. Mr. Vickery, second by Mr. Seroy. All in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Speeding through. Probation. There we go. Yes. Yeah. Moving up to the leadoff spot. That's right. That's right. Okay.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
We have a motion to combine and approve Tom's two reports. Mr. Parker, second by Mr. Seroy. He's hot today.
As you could, obviously in your packet there, we filed both the activity reports for December and January. I just wanted to focus on the December 17 report, which provides us with an overall activity for the year. Specifically, the totals at the bottom. As you can see, we had 30,431 contacts for the year. That's compared to 27,000 last year, so increased it by a little over 3,400 or 12%, which we're very happy with. In 2017, we screened 281 minors for detention and detained 146. In 2016, we screened 284, but detained only 128, 18 less minors. And so as a result, our detention days increased from about 3,400 to 4,800 days. So, one stat that kind of surprised me was in our drug court, our number of defendants that participated in drug court decreased from 16 by 16, which I really believe that's just overall our caseload dipped a little bit last year. So I think that's just reflective of that. And obviously when they dip a little bit, when overall caseload dips, which just happens year to year, it affects everything from how many drug tests we do to juveniles being detained to individuals in problem-solving courts and things like that. So I think that's all that is. So, any questions on the report?
Questions for Mr. Lathan? Mr. Seroy?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Tom, you said last year went up 12% from the prior year?
From 2016, yeah.
Okay, I just want to make sure if that was the actual stat from 2016 to 2017, 12%.
Yes.
You anticipate it going up from 16 to 18? this year? Do you think?
I don't know. I think it eventually levels off just because we have staff in place. And in 16 we were hiring, so there was a time period in there we didn't have vacant positions. So that impacts the contacts.
Okay.
So if we have people leave, which you never know, and then we fill the spots, then it could dip a little bit in fact.
I was just trying to see if that was the true number of cases that your department got year to year. If you're going up 12% each year, then that's very
No,
alarming.
in fact, at 17, the caseloads dipped a little bit, like I said. So the contacts went up anyway. So we're hitting more of the same people, I guess. So. That's in on stats.
Okay.
One area that went up and will continue to increase is the pre-trials I've discussed here before. That new Bail Reform Act went into effect January 1st, which we discussed, which divides the offenses into Category A and Category B. We've discussed that here several times. Not only are those numbers going up, but we realized that in Category B, which is the individuals that are going to be released, that includes anybody charged with unlawful use of a weapon, arrested with a firearm, most of them. There's a few exceptions. So along with that, they're placing those individuals on house arrest, so with the increased number, also there's a level of supervision's high. We're getting a lot of contacts with them, a lot of work. So it's one area that was kind of missed as we looked at this coming along. We didn't realize that UUW was on there. So we'll see how that goes. We'll see if they change that in Springfield or what, but I'm sure that'll be a slow process. So that's when we report, and I'll continue to report on our pretrial situation as we go forward now that that's in effect. So
Tom, how's everything going in the building with security wise?
I've talked to Andy again just 2 weeks ago about it. So we haven't done anything yet, but we're looking at different alternatives.
Okay.
Nothing's happened outside of the normal stuff since our 2 months ago, I guess, last committee. So outside it's cold, so there's people in the building, to stay warm, things like that.
Okay. Anything for Mr. Latham?
That's about it. Like I said, next month I'll report on if there's any new legislation that's going to be introduced that's going to kill our operations or financially strap us. I think this Friday is the deadline for new bills to be introduced, so this Friday, I believe. So the 16th, that's Friday. And so we'll know, and I'll report on that next committee.
Sounds good. Thanks a lot.
I think. Happy Valentine's Day.
We'll go Sandy. We've already approved everything. Yeah.
We've already approved.
Yep.
Thank you. Sorry for my lateness. So I guess we can go ahead and discuss the reports. If nobody had any questions on the regular disbursement report, that's normal and customary. The state's attorney and court call report is the small sheet here where it shows the monthly court calls that we've had, or not had, but the money that came through because of the efforts of that court call. And to date, we've brought in $96,712.05. So if there's any questions on that.
Any questions for Sandy at all?
Okay, so then the Harris and Harris Local Debt Recovery Program, I've got some notes here. The recovery report, in analyzing the recoveries report, January of 2017 and 2018, as well as December of 2017, saw significant increases over the same months of previous years. Harris has done a good job with the initiatives offered to the counties this year, which they've added the wage deduction court call, and so if you look at those totals, we've increased each of those months, which are normally quieter months, so that's a good way to show that we've done well with that. But if you can look, 2017 is right up there with 2015, which was the first year that we did the eyedrop collection program, where we sent files to the comptroller's office, and then they were able to intercept the state taxes from people that owed money. So we're gearing up for that. We've already started receiving money and calls and things about that, so that'll be ramping up for February, March, and April. Then on the next report, the open inventory analysis. This one, they've changed it up a little bit. We're not reporting the felony money that's owed now. We're not sending that off to them. So this first report is a more realistic number of what's collectible. So that would be through traffic, ordinance violations, misdemeanors, conservation tickets, and DUIs. And then on the next page, it's the total open inventory analysis. So you can see we still include in that what the felony reporting that we sent off to them before. We haven't really pulled them back yet, I don't think. I think that's the plan, though. Is that right, Jim? To pull those back? Okay. So if there's any questions on that.
Questions at all?
Yeah, no kidding. The other thing I wanted to talk about, our e-file station construction is complete. I want to thank Kevin and Jason and Brian for getting that organized and scheduled. We've been busy since we got it done December 29th, I think, that last Friday. We were buttoning the whole thing up. Judge Kramer was able to get a grant for the computers and scanners, so that was not a cost to us. E-filing overall is going better. It's been very stressful. The law offices are calling because we've been trying to catch up from the shutdown, and then the e-filing, receiving it, and we have to review everything, and if it's not correct, we have to reject it and send it back to the law offices, and then they're frustrated because they don't know why they weren't doing it right. We give them the number that we were supposed to give them to call Tyler Technologies to get help, and then Tyler Technologies says you need to contact your clerk's office. It's just been a constant circle, but we're smoothing it out as best we can. So now we are currently accepting e-filing for all new and existing civil. We're not yet integrated, which means whenever we receive e-filing, we have to print it out and then go back into our system and rescan it back in, and it's a laborious process. The integration, we're still working on getting the codes connected between my office and Courtview and Tyler. They should be ready to test, I think, in April, but we're still building the project, so it'll be a while. What else? I offered comp time on Saturday, February 3rd, because we were open for the warrant forgiveness program with the state's attorney's office, so I figured the lights would already be on, the heat would be on, so I may as well make hay while the sun shines. So I offered it to all 33 employees, and 17 came in to work for 4 hours. That's how much work we are behind, and they were very appreciative of the time because they're tired of coming in being so stressed out because they can't keep up. So that was a good thing. I'm planning on offering it again on February 24th. So we're getting there. And then one thing happened during the shutdown that we finally hit the brick wall in not having enough time to do the work that we have piling in with some of the collection calls. The clerk that went to the collection call, you know, she has her files and her orders and everything, but then she would come back to her desk and then have to immediately go somewhere else or do something, and things have just been piling up. So one day during the shutdown, this guy came in and wanted to pay $25. That was his agreement with the state's attorney, but we kept looking at all his files and we couldn't figure out what that agreement was. There was nothing in writing that told us how to receive the money. And with all the programs we have, we can't just receive money there's a processes for each one. So we did track it back, and I found Desiree in Jim's office told us that there was a court call that the orders hadn't been entered yet. This was at the end of December, and that court call was at the beginning of November. So I went and I found the tray, because then that clerk was off, for the holiday and everything. So I found that tray and I entered all those orders that day, so that at least when somebody came in, we had half an idea how to collect the $25. And I know it's only 25, but it could have, that's just where we are in our office. But we're getting there. So I think that's really all I have to say.
Anything else?
Thank you.
Mr. State's Attorney. Need a motion to approve and combine and approve 2 reports. 7, second by Mr. Payton. All in favor? Opposed? Motion moves. Motion approved. Hello. How are you doing?
You can see through that first grand jury in January, there have been 33 indictments. That number's gone up since then. I don't have a current total, but we do grand juries every other week. We do somewhere between probably 30 and 40 at each grand jury. Anyone have any questions about that number or any of the stats attached to it? Second thing is just some cleanup work. So state law under county code has the county set the number of state's attorneys, and that number can be anywhere, any number really. But then the state's attorney's office has to operate still within the budget allocation. So it turns out in I don't know if it was 94, 98, 94, it was set at 14. Since then, at one point, there was up to 22 ASAs in there, so I think it's probably been over that number since 95. But of course, we want to work within the law. So I'm going to be asking the board to set that number now at 17. That does not mean we are hiring additional people. We have 16 in the office right now. The reason I want 1 extra slot is not to hire another person, but so we have some leeway when someone's on the way out, we can bring someone in and they can overlap for a week or 2. It's not my intention to hire any additional assistant state's attorneys. If that ever came up, I will come back to the board. But that's why I'm asking for a set of 17, even though we only intend to carry 16. And in fact, we do have an attorney that's going to be leaving soon, probably within the next month or 2. It's our traffic prosecutor. He's moving out of state, so I would like to have that leeway to bring someone in so he can train him at least, for a short period before he leaves. So I think that would require
The motion approved, Mr. Seaborn.
Instead of 14.
Seconded by Mr. Snipes. We have a motion. All in favor? Opposed? Comments? Mr. Vickery?
Mr. Chairman, should we send that to finance too?
Well, it's not a financial issue because we're still required to work within the budgetary constraints, so I'm not asking for any additional finances. It's just merely county code under state law says the board sets the number of assistant state's attorneys.
So this will go to the board.
It'll go to the board, yes. And then finally, the report on the ceiling clinic, the warrant forgiveness clinic. We had about 216 people show up at that ceiling clinic. That was thanks in large part to Pastor Montel Crawford from Morning Star Baptist Church. He got the word out in the community, helped us get people to trust to come in, to avail themselves of those services. Out of the 216, with the new ceiling laws, I'd say probably close to 200 people are eligible to have their background sealed or expunged. Very few expungements, mostly sealed. That's a good thing. One gentleman came in, he said it had been over 20 years that he was not able to get a job because when he was, I think, 18 or 19, he had a felony for possession of cannabis, and that just stuck on his record. It's very hard to get those expunged or sealed. He now is able to get it sealed, and he said he felt like he had lived as half a man for all those years. So in those instances, you know, we're really happy to help people get back on their feet, hopefully get back into the workforce, become contributing members of our community. You know, of course, that adds a strain on Clerk Seance's office. What happens after you do one of those clinics on a weekend is that Monday morning, you know, everyone's running in with their paperwork to file it. And there's a lot of work that goes into it on the clerk side. So initially we were going to do it during the shutdown, but that would have been a disaster. So we really try to work with the clerk's office on timing. I appreciate the efforts of you and your employees on accommodating the, you know, the extra business, so to say, that's come across the counter there in the last couple weeks. And then the warrant forgiveness clinic, that went fairly well. I was hoping for a better turnout. You know, there's over 5,000 active traffic and misdemeanor warrants in the county. That's shocking to me, because you figure we're a county of barely over 100,000 people, and then when you take the population that is 18 or over, right, 5,000 warrants is a good chunk. I mean, you know, it's probably not healthy to have at least 5% of your population running around wanted. So if we could reduce that number, not by dismissing cases, but by getting them back on the program, get them into court, quash the warrant, get them back on the court schedule, we thought that would be helpful, be a healthy thing for the county. We only had about 100 people show up. I think it's 101, 100, a little over 100, right? Yeah. But it was still good, and for the people that came in, they're back on that program. They don't have to drive around and worry about getting pulled over or anything like that. So overall, I thought it was okay.
Mr. Snipes?
Those individuals who have their getting their cases sealed or expunged, but more so sealed, when they go to the state's attorney, I mean not the state's attorney, but to the circuit clerk, what fees are imposed? I know there has to be, to get stuff filed, there has to be filing fees and all that good stuff. So
Well, there could be filing fees, but they can fill out a petition for waiver of fees, and judges review that, and in some instances they'll grant them, in some instances they're not. So if they're not able to pay, they can come in and fill out a petition and probably get the fee waived.
but there are some fees that are associated with getting that done, so therefore it brings in some type of revenue.
Yes. And on the warrant forgiveness clinic, you know, I want to thank Judge Cunnington and Judge Tungate. They gave time out of their schedules to come in. Judge Cunnington came in on that Saturday morning. The sheriff had guys there. The sheriff was there. Sandy in the circuit clerk's office. We had a court reporter come in. Some employees from my office came in. I really appreciate everyone's efforts in making that happen. You know, we actually had more people come in on Friday afternoon than we did Saturday morning. So if we do this in the future, hopefully we can keep it during regular court hours. But I appreciate everyone's efforts in accommodating that. One last thing, there's an executive session on the agenda by number 11, and then a release of executive session minutes. We probably don't need the executive session because there was only 3 meetings at which there were sealed minutes, and that was November 17th, 2015, January 19th, 2016. Those were both closed for union negotiations, which have concluded. And August 16th of 2015, that litigation is concluded. So they're all able to be released. So I don't know if you want to just jump to 12, which is the new business, and you can do a release of those executive sessions.
Make a motion, George, make a motion, second. Mr. Vickery, to release the executive session minutes. All in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Oh, no, Ms. Evans?
Sorry. Thank you. There was a new program that you were starting, I believe, in January. It was called
Diversion program.
How is that going so far?
It's going well. We're now in the process where we've got forms that we're putting into the courtroom, so cases that are already in the system that would be eligible for diversion, those are going to be, you know, diverted, so to say, into that program. We also have sent out, I'd say, well over 100 and something letters to people, so we're getting them in pre-charge before the case comes into Sandy's office, or it has to, you know, go through Tom or the sheriff. So we're hoping to keep them out of the system. The response to that has not been as well as expected, but I think it's because people don't really understand the program yet. So as word gets out there more, I think we'll have a better response to it.
How far back did you go? I guess I thought it was for new arrests from January 1st on.
So, any case that's pending in the system, so let's just say, a disorderly conduct charge, okay? Petty misdemeanor, disorderly conduct. If you've got someone that was just arrested for it, we can send them that letter, and before they're even charged in the court system or anything is filed in the court system by the state's attorney's office, they can get into that program. So that's a pre-charge diversion. But if you have someone who's in the court system already and charged with the exact same crime, I wouldn't want to not offer them that opportunity to divert their case just because we didn't have the program in place in time. So, yeah, we're not changing anything, so to say, as what's eligible. We're just making sure that everyone, whether they were arrested but not charged yet, or if they've already been charged, that they're eligible for it.
Thank you, sir. Oh, Mr. Snipes. Good. Corn. I'd like to acknowledge Bob, too, for being honored as Man of the Year in the Daily Journal. We're real lucky to have Bob do a lot of good work in the community.
Thank you, sir.
Congratulations.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Very well deserved. Need a motion to combine and approve Bob's reports in your packet. Ms. Dunbar, second by Ms. Parker. All in favor? Opposed? Motion moves forward.
Okay, just the brief from December to January on your reports there. That we're running right just about equal with last year with the amount of autopsies. I think we're down like 2 or something like that, but calls are still up. Basically, other than that, I don't see anything else on there. There's 6 incompletes right now that's waiting back on toxicology and stuff like that. Other than that, I'll have any questions on that at all.
Any comments or questions for Bob? Mr. Snipes.
Your gunshots are down to 0 then?
No, not necessarily. I think we got one, don't we? There, that's the one, the incomplete.
So you want to do, so the new fact they're down from all of that shooting in the past, so that's almost like what you did.
That's good. That's very good to hear. Somebody's doing their job out there, right? I just want to make, before I forget, yesterday we received our finance department report. Before somebody sees this, it says in our training we spent $8,515 in our training. That was covered by a grant. There was a check right behind that. I don't know why it even came out. That was paid for immediately by a check from our grant. So that subtract that $8,500 out. There's a lot of other stuff that's coming out of our salaries, our mileage, and all that stuff that you won't see, but it goes back into the general fund. So I'll keep you posted on that. We're saving thousands of dollars right now on with this grant. Update on the grant: the $225,000. We're just about finished with that. June 1st is the deadline on that. In 2018, 2019, I'm happy to tell you that we got another grant. That'll help us again with the programs we put on, and not only that, the Narcan, the naloxone, however you want to call it. That's very good news. The amount of money we don't know as of yet, but we expect it somewhere right around in that particular area. I put on a, like I said, just remind yourself that grant's been saving us thousands of dollars in many factors, and it doesn't cost anything to the county to put these programs on, so keep that in mind. The new drugs, there's new drugs on the street. The only reason why I'm bringing these up to you is the fact it costs money to go after these new drugs because they're so new. They're into our county already. One is methylacetylfentanyl, which is another one as powerful as carfentanil. It's roughly about 6,000 powerful than morphine itself. That's in the community. We're thinking that might have hit 2 people in this particular area very close to where we're at right now. We're having some problems with the hotels where we're picking up a lot of people that have done overdoses. These drugs, so what we have to do is they're so new on the market that they're being mixed by people that have no clue about how to mix drugs. But still, to be able to get these, they have to redo their system to be able to go after these particular drugs, and that costs about $300 per drug, and that's where we're at with $600 right now in the last 2 weeks that we've had to spend this for. And yet, again, why do we have to do this? Because you might have a little trace of it in there. If we go after induced homicide or something like that, we have to have an autopsy. There's no question about it. Whether the drugs are right there in front of them, we have to have the autopsy. And we have to know exactly what's in the system. And these are some powerful drugs that are out there right now. K-Meg, and along with a lot of your law enforcement, including your county, has done a great job out there and knocking these people out. But you can see they come right around again, and here they come again. Last year at this time, we had 12 overdoses in the month of February. We're down a little bit on overdoses, which is very good. I think things are working out there, and the law enforcement's working extremely hard out there. So. Also, just to talk about the programs that we had for this particular program, we're continually going out to all the schools. We just got a list just recently. We're hitting roughly from now until May, first part of May we're hitting over 20-some schools and programs coming up here. Again, there's no charge to the county. It used to be, but not now. It comes out of the grant. All the billboards you see up that we put up, it all comes out of the grant. We got some new equipment as far as mannequins and stuff, so we can teach here. We've got that all out of the grant. So, and again, I'm proud to say we're going to have another grant in 2018 and 19. So that saying that we also, I want to say that on May 8th, keep that on your calendar. Thank you very much for Pat O'Connor and Roger Hess and Jim Burns and Tinker Parker and Steve Lear showed up at our last forum. It was a great program. We had 247 seats at KCC. We filled every one of them but except 3. So we were very pleased with that. We're bringing back Tim Ryan for one more event along with his partner, the detective from Naperville who just retired. Your phone is the next thing that is where a lot of these drugs are coming from, is what we hear and what we've seen throughout the state. We're going to talk about the phones. This police officer is a very expert in the phones and knowing what's in the phones. He showed Eric and I when we were in Watsika some of the things, how to get pictures and how to block your phones from your kids and knowing what they're doing. It's quite a program. So keep May 8th on the program. We'll be at a ONU, Olivet, that can draw, I think, up to 400 some people that we can have in there. It's going to be a very interesting. It's called Cop versus Convict. So that's what it is, and we're excited about that. Again, no cost to the county at all. I want to thank, as you said, the citizens of the year, but I also want to thank people that surround me. State's Attorney Jim Rowe, the Health Department John Beavis, my Chief Deputy Eric Cavender, and of course our sheriff also is right behind me all the time too. So we appreciate that. I'll take any questions that anybody has. I did get on 2 more committees. I told you that I was on Sticks, ISP's Sticks program down in Springfield for opioids. I've learned a lot off of that. And yesterday I got on the Law Enforcement Mutual Aid Committee down in Springfield, which is for the coroners, because we're involved in a lot of that when they have something go down real bad. That's all they talked about was opioids yesterday. So again, we're staying up on it, continuing to keep busy. I'm not bearing back at all.
I have a quick question. This is probably open for Sheriff and State Attorney Rowe. mentioned hotels. Is there anything the county could do, or municipalities? There's one in particular in my district that's, let's just say, a problem. And what can we do to hold those businesses accountable as well? Is there anything we can do?
Nuisance laws usually are aimed at residential properties. It's difficult to go into a business and say that that business is responsible for what its patrons do, right? You think of the gas station where they had a number of overdose deaths for a while. When someone goes into their restroom, they can't really police that.
Yeah, it's a slippery slope. I was just
Same
curious.
thing at like the Route 50 motel where there's
Yeah.
been a number of overdose deaths and drug activity. It's difficult. I think that comes down to more, maybe we can encourage them to have more security, work better with law enforcement, install some cameras that outside agencies could access. But as far as going in and trying to shut them down, we can explore that. But I think that'd be a tough standard to meet in court, because you'd almost have to show that they had knowledge of what was going on in their property.
Because when you have people using drugs in a hotel, they have to get in a vehicle and go home. And if they're under the influence, it's a public safety matter. You could have some guy, God knows what. So, Mr. Lear, thank you.
In regard to some of these issues, I know that the chairman is working on some different ideas that may help relieve some of the problems. But at this point, it's premature to say too much more.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Evans.
I also, excuse me, I also found out recently, though, that due to Salvation Army's closing, that they've been putting up some of the people at the Route 50
Yes.
hotel. So that could be why there's a little additional activity going on, that's all.
Mr. Snipes.
Yeah, add a caveat. There's a organization that's come in town. Guess they purchased the Code building. They have Latin background, and they're operating out of the Joliet Church Diocese. But they want to deal with the homeless and, respite for individuals coming out of like prison and trying to transition back into the real life, along in that ministry and things of that nature. And they are looking for the volunteers and support. So I met with them, and we're trying to. They also want to have breakfast for the homeless, and like a lunch as well, and also a little warming center during these winter months and maybe in the cool months. Thought that was a great opportunity. They have it in Chicago. They have it in Joliet. So I told them I would to let them meet with some of the politicians and then some of the community leaders, and perhaps we can help them make that happen or whatever. So it's nice that they're coming in to our community. Also to Bob, I saw y'all, Mr. Evasion here, but under these 4 years, are we charging them, or is that just, how's that revenue?
What's that?
It says like FOI, is that the
FOIA?
4 year?
We get charged.
We do charge for 4 years? Okay. So, because I was wondering, I know like the first 50 pages is free or something, I don't know. But in these cases, they have 4 years, and they have to,
Mostly that, they're getting the autopsy report and the
oh, okay, so they're getting something.
not
Yeah.
50 pages.
Oh, okay.
Also, one other thing, the Journal did give some money for a charity, and I did give that money to Lassam Ministry, Mark Jones, for his work that he's also worked with me along with a lot of his clients and people that are at his place. So that I gave that to them, and also we'll be in St. Anne on the 20th of April. So yeah, be there. That's it.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you again.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Sheriff, need a motion to approve the monthly report? Mr. Washington, second by Mr. Fairfield. All in favor? Opposed? Motion passes. Good morning.
Good morning. Yeah, our red dye. All right. Get my stuff straight here. All right, your monthly report that was emailed to you anything of significance on there, on the upper part, you can see that our change in revenue from January of 2017 to January 2018, we have been able to bring in more than $190,000 so far this year. As you guys know, the projected revenue that we are asked to bring in is this year 8.7 million, which is 300,000 more than last year. So right now, if the numbers hold true, we will certainly meet that and stay within our number. A couple things to point out. You can see that in January of 2017, our locals versus our out-of-counties. I know that I have told this committee a number of times as our local population continued to increase, and we were floating around 280. Through January, we're at 264, so that number has come down a little bit, which is beneficial for all of us. And the out-of-counties, which were 290 in January 2017, we're at 323 in January 2018. So those are all good things. And we hope that that remains consistent. We have no reason to think it won't. The second part, the transports have really remained consistent. Of the categories that you see across the top there, the medical, the U.S. Marshal Service, 4 of those categories, all 3 of the marshals and ICE, we are reimbursed salary and mileage. And in the medical transports, if those medical transports are marshals or ICE, we also get reimbursed for those too. So, and our bookings and Department of Corrections numbers remain consistent. There's not much change. We send less to DOC than we get back from DOC. So, which once they get to prison, nobody here has any control over who they release and why. So, on the sworn side, one thing to note, and you look at these numbers, those numbers are calculated via calendar year as opposed to fiscal year. All the numbers up on the corrections side, the revenues, the transports, those are all fiscal year. So that's why you see that in 2018, total is 65 warning tickets, and there were 65 warning tickets in January. So those are all calendar year numbers. I can tell you that our traffic enforcement warnings and citations are up, and our guys are out there trying to keep our roads safe. Obviously, the last couple weeks with all the snow is somewhat challenging, but while there were accidents, I think overall, I think we were pleased with the traffic and how people handled the last week or so with the weather. So people were smart about traveling. The schools were so smart about it, they canceled class without any snow. So anyway, our other activity on the sworn side continues to increase as our sworn division continues to do more with less. And the third section of our report, the revenue, our 2-month average in bed rentals, salaries, inmate phones, and other inmate revenues, we're averaging $856,263 a month. When you multiply that out by 12, it comes out to about $10,275,000 for the year if those numbers stay consistent, which we don't have a reason to think they won't. And if you look at the history back in, we are getting back to our numbers back in 2013 and 2014, which were relatively good years. questions on the report?
Anybody have any for Sheriff? Mr. Snipes.
Transportation, I know we get reimbursement for the mileage or whatever, which is kind of incorporating the wear and tear on vehicles and all that kind of stuff.
Pays for gas.
Well, that's what they say, and supposed to have all that up in there. But nevertheless, when that when we buy vehicles, they reimburse us for certain things. Is there any allocations of that to replace these vehicles down the line, or wherever? So as we utilize these vehicles, they get a little older or exceed the.
We
the
utilize, and I assume you're talking about corrections vehicles, since that's what we're getting
right,
reimbursed
just
for.
transporting back.
2 years ago, we purchased 2 new vans. Last year, we purchased 2 new vans. It wasn't a smooth process. We have to fight for every wheel we get, which is a little frustrating, because we need these vehicles to do our job and to keep our people safe on the roads. We would hope, and I have asked before, for money to be set aside of the $823,000 that, or $856,000 that we're bringing in every month, to put some money aside so that we can effectively operate this out-of-county program. And that has somewhat fallen on deaf ears. So as we move forward, we'll continue to request vehicles when we need them. And that's about all I can tell you.
Is there anything that stops us from having or making a recommendation for this to be set aside, because we know that it is as part of the customary use of doing business that we want to be? Definitely, I wouldn't want a vehicle, if I'm transporting someone, to fall down or break down, excuse me, on my way to transporting. The reason I say that is because when I worked in corrections with the state, even though I had state police officers and stuff to, they escort us. Sometimes I question that particular judgment, because there was a time when I was in, we had to go to the west side of Chicago, and as a writ officer, they told me they was going to send undercover state police officers, so that way, and they won't know them in the crowd. This is the only time black and white came into the picture. I'm black, I'm down in Chicago, we're there, we're in a gangster disciples ordeal. They sent 2 white officers in plain clothes. Now, if you looked in the building, you automatically knew who they were. So if they wanted to shoot us, that'd have been it. But my thing was, when they say they're gonna send someone that's, wouldn't stand out, sometimes we have to think where we're going, so. But if a vehicle would have broken down, we would have been gone. Or if they would have ambushed our vehicle, we would have been gone, especially if the vehicle would be broken down. What stops you from coming in if you broke it down, for that person to go get their individual and they're gone? The safety to me is far most important. And I'm thinking at this particular time that if nothing else, for that line item, we need to have something to the side.
Well, it's on the agenda further down in the Sheriff's report, on the agenda here today.
Okay, so then I gave my preaching
There you
just
go.
a little bit earlier. And
You
I'll
used up
preach
all your
it.
allotted time, Bob.
Absolutely.
You're done.
My turn?
Yeah, okay.
All right.
Mr. Vickery?
Now that thankfully we passed interfund transfers of money, maybe we can do something. Thank you.
I'm all for that.
Mr. Payton?
What's the reasonable amount that needs to be set aside?
Well, I think that amount is something that probably needs to be discussed, because I think might be reasonable, and I'm sure that the finance department and the chairman would have what he would think would be reasonable.
Then it should pass unanimous.
And so, and when we say putting money aside, if we have to use that money for something else, by all means. I mean, that's what we've done for 12 years or however long we've had this program. I mean, that money, some of that money has always been used for something else. I just don't want to get into a position where there's not money available for us to continue, and we've had breakdowns, as Mr. Snipes alluded to. We've had breakdowns, and they're not fun, and they're labor intensive, especially when you have a van or in some cases a busload of either U.S. Marshal prisoners or ICE detainees. And then when we miss court, then we look at the courts look at us as, oh, apparently they can't do the job, and that's about the furthest from the truth, but that's the perception.
And there have been board members that have asked, why aren't we reinvesting the money back into the park?
Correct.
And then it gets the finance, it gets to a situation where a lot of people resist funding the department. That happens. So, I guess if you want to address the issues now, we can move back to that item, or you want to move on until we get to it? That could be it, please.
Oh, we can wait.
Okay.
Yeah, because that's all another issue. Second thing I got is the ICE update. As I mentioned earlier, our numbers continue to increase. I can't say enough about the leadership of jail administration with Chad Kalawinzu and Rob Schultz, and what they're doing over there to maintain this program and continue to make us attractive for ICE. We do have another Nakamoto inspection in late March. These all, this housing of ICE comes with making sure that we meet their standards, and the correction staff has really bought into making sure that we are following ICE standards, and that has benefited everybody as far as not only our staff, because it made our staff better, but it makes it actually benefits all the inmates we have in addition to ICE, as far as what we're doing and how we're doing it. And I think it's, I would put our staff up against anybody in the country as far as the job they do. And so these inspections, while they're burdensome, they are beneficial. Yesterday at the county board meeting, a representative from Kankakee spoke in public comment. And I think her comments were basically geared toward the ICE program. She mentioned herself that she filed some FOIAs which were properly answered by Chief McCabe. And one of the, a couple things that she wanted to know is, what direction is the county going with ICE? And I took that as, are we looking to expand our facility? But nonetheless, just for your information, half of our out-of-county numbers are marshals. So while we have about 300, averaging about 320 or so out of county, half of those are marshals. So even if ICE were to go away, we would still have, a significant number of out-of-county inmates. I did reach out to her after the meeting while you guys were in closed session talking about important stuff. I reached out to her in the hallway, introduced myself, and offered to sit down and discuss with her, and even offered to take her on a tour of the facility, which she was very receptive to, very appreciative. And so I don't look at her comments as anything but other than wanting information. And so, I will keep the committee updated as we move along further. I gave her my card with my cell phone number on it, so she has the ability to contact me at any time to come in and check it out for herself. She did bring up an interesting point that probably needs clarification from this committee and ultimately the full board. And I guess that is, what is the desire of the board as it relates to our out-of-county inmates and detainees? We have told you, and we have provided numbers that back in fiscal year 15, when our numbers were not very good, or they were low, they were down, the program still saved our local taxpayers right around $2 million. In fiscal year 16, that number went up a little bit to $2.5 million in savings to the local taxpayers. And last year, we estimate the number to be right around $4 million that this program is saving our local taxpayers from funding our own inmates. And I think those are numbers that bear themselves out. They're the numbers that were accepted by the Committee of Five back in the day. And with that report, we're able to monitor that so that we kind of know where we're at with our program and make sure that we're not on that tipping point, as people referred to, because we all know that sometimes these numbers can be volatile. So, questions on that?
Questions for Sheriff? Mr. Lear?
As one board member, I think part of my response to where the board is we're looking at what the citizens tell us as taxpayers, and clearly they have told us that they want us to find sources of revenue that do not rely on sales tax. We've tried that request of the taxpayers, and they have said no, that's not how they want us to fund local government. So to the extent that our responsibility to represent those wishes, finding alternative sources of revenue is clearly what the majority of the public is currently asking us to do.
Yeah, I would agree.
Ms. Dunbar?
I feel like her questions or their concerns as a group are more related to immigrant rights rather than...
Yeah, there was a mix.
Yeah, okay.
Absolutely. I mean, I think and people are going to have that. I think that was part of it, because that's what she focused on. She obviously didn't focus really on our marshals. And so, yeah, that was certainly part of it. But like I said, and that's why I'd rather sit down with her. Some of the immigrant rights groups that have really come out and are opposed to all of it. We've brought them in. I mean, because we don't want to hide anything. We don't want to think that they're in here getting treated badly. The Bishop of Joliet was here, and I was worried because as a Catholic myself, I know the Catholic stance on immigration. He did tell me I wasn't going to hell yet, so I felt pretty good about that. But there's still hope. But no, he wrote me, and he wrote a nice letter when he got back. Wrote a nice letter about our staff, and the line he put in the letter that really struck me and really made me feel pretty good about the whole operation was that even though these individuals are getting sent out of the country, he said it was good to know that they came into contact with us and were in our care before they went. So that says a lot about our staff, and so that that part of it certainly was encouraging.
Reach to individuals and your transparency.
Thank you. Anything else? The annual report. We got a little problem with the annual report. You can see it's a little thick, but it's got a lot of information in it. The unfortunate part is it was too big to email to you guys. We were set to email it Friday, and was informed that it wouldn't email. So we are going to reduce the number of pages and send that out to you guys, send that out to the entire board via email. Just a couple highlights that I think are important from a county-wide standpoint, and the job that our deputies do and our correctional officers do and our investigation unit does. Our civil process numbers are up, our citations are up, our calls for service are up, over 800, which is significant. Our arrests are up, our thefts are down, our ODs are up, which is not a big surprise. Our DUIs are up, so we're out there writing more DUIs. Fatal accidents actually went down from 23 to 19. Our accidents unfortunately went up. Our domestic battery cases went down. Our burglaries went down. Robberies actually increased by 2 from 6 to 8. And our sexual offenses remained fairly the same at 40 from 41 last year, 43 this year. So overall, I think those numbers bear out that You know, we're making some improvements on our numbers. We're trying to keep our community safe, and it's a credit to our deputies that are out there every day doing the job. So, questions on our numbers? Like I said, we'll get you the emailable version as soon as we get it done.
Mr. Lear.
I wonder, Sheriff, if you could send maybe a paper copy of the full report to the chairman, rather than a shorter one, and then maybe any board member that requests it.
We will. We did not want to kill trees.
I'm sure that.
And we did not want to waste color copies because we understand those cost money. So, but emailing them doesn't cost us a thing. So we can certainly email a smaller version with similar information. So
Thank you.
Mr. Vickery.
Yeah, thank you, Sheriff, for not putting that on there, because, you know, if you click on it and then the printer doesn't want to shut off, sometimes I can't figure out how to shut it off. Okay, and you get 400 pages. Thank you very much.
Exactly.
One comment, I was involved in the original negotiations to put the program together with Sheriff Kankakee
Yep.
and Carl Cruz. I was chairman of finance at the time, and we had many meetings. And as George and Jim can recall, maybe there's another older board member here, when we had to sell the finance committee on the bonds and then take it to the full county board. So that was a task.
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, yeah.
It wasn't easy to go borrow that money. So we believed in the program, the committee that Carl put together, and we took it to the limit. All right. Another thing, on your staff, I was involved in negotiations, union negotiations this year, and I was thoroughly impressed with your staff.
Good.
Their rapport with the corrections people on that negotiation team, I couldn't ask for more. None of us on the committee could ask for more. They had a great rapport with the corrections staff and people, but your staff had great knowledge. We relied on their knowledge for the language issues that came up in corrections. We did not want to take away any management rights, and but their knowledge of the operation and the rapport with the corrections people, you couldn't ask for more. So each time you mention that, I applaud that, because sometimes that gets lost in the whole picture.
Right.
So you've got a great staff. Thank you.
Yeah, you know what, I would say the majority of them watch, and with the ability to now see these meetings, I think they are more involved from the standpoint of understanding where the board's at with finances, and they know. And when they sit down at the negotiation table, they realize that they're not going to get a 10% increase. They understand that they want something, like we all would, but they understand the situation that the county's in. They understand, you know, all of those things that make negotiation a little bit, I wouldn't call it easy, because it's never easy, but at least it's understandable, you know, on both sides. And I think both sides you guys know what they do. They know what you do and what you're dealing with, so I think that helps everything. But I appreciate that.
You know, when you go into that, initially, you don't know what to expect.
Right.
So you open your mind and you say, let me get the feedback, and it was excellent. Thank you.
Good. The next one is staffing. We're in the process of replacing the deputy that we had recently retired. I told the finance committee that as individuals retire by contract, they are provided with some things that they get paid out for: vacation time, half of their sick time, and things like that. So it's difficult for us to have someone leave when they're still on our books getting paid, and then start another person and he's getting paid, so you're paying twice. So we try to hold off on that for that reason. And so we are in the process of replacing him as soon as we are done paying him. Historically, in 2017, we lost 3 sworn officers. whose salaries combined totaled over $200,000. We lost a chief, we lost a sergeant, we lost a corporal, each with well over 25 years of experience. We replaced 2 of those officers at a cost just slightly over $100,000. In addition to replacing the deputy we lost this year, I would really like to add 2 more that of the deputies that we did not replace. And we are looking at our budget number to see if we can make it. But it is something I know the state's attorney was up here telling you wants to put a cap on his. I am looking to hire 2 in addition to what we're at. We're at 43 deputies right now. I do have, ironically, you've probably seen some of our Throwback Thursday stuff that we put out, and I've actually got an article here from June of 1985 where our county population was 100,100. And back in 1985, they were trying to get up to, and I should have highlighted it, but they were trying to get up to 40 deputies. Right now we're at 43. So in 1987, there's an article in the paper about hiring, and it says if the county board approves a budget proposal, the number of deputies may reach 47 in 1987. We're still at 43. So we've gone nowhere, even though at one point we were at 67. We are now down below 1985 and 87 numbers in a job that is significantly more dangerous, as unfortunately what happened last night or yesterday in Chicago. But we saw yesterday because yesterday was on the Chicago news, and that's what we all watch. What we missed was the 2 guys in Ohio who responded to a domestic battery call and were basically ambushed. I mean, the call was really what they're determining wasn't accurate. And so these 2 police officers show up in Ohio and get gunned down. And that happens in Ohio. What happened yesterday in Chicago, it can happen anywhere. And when we're sending, we have a 1-man car that we're sending to a place and his backup might be 40 miles away, that's problematic for us. So
That's the one thing I noticed when I've ridden with the deputies. You go out and they'll do a traffic stop. When we were out in Pembroke, and you're pulling people over that you don't know what they have in the car, and they're obviously not up that good. You're one guy in the middle of nowhere. A lot of people don't realize the risk involved.
Well, I tell you that we have 43, but I will also tell you that over the course of time, we have salaries that are reimbursed or fully funded or partially reimbursed, partially funded. And I can go over those with you real quick. The Metro pays us $207,000 for 2 officers. Our sexual assault grant is $106,000. Our courthouse security reimburses us $110,000. Indian Oaks Academy writes us a check for $90,000 a year. We get $20,800 for having a guy in KMEG. We get $62,000 for having a guy assigned over at the RAC for the regional office. Our village contracts that our guys work overtime for, we actually made $8,868 in what we got paid from these village contracts compared to what we paid our officers. Our stolen auto, even though that funding has somewhat dried up, we don't get the full amount. We get $7,800 a year. However, there is some potential now that is going to go back to being fully funded, which would be about $80,000 a year. And Shoe Fest. Some of you may not know what Shoe Fest is. They have it out at the state park or out at Camp Shawanassee. And they pay us $16,885 for us to have deputies out there the whole weekend. That totals $629,000 in funds that are reimbursed every year. 10 deputies are paid for out of that $629,000. The county is actually funding 33 deputies, not 43. You're funding 33. And I think it's important for some of the board members who may not understand that to know that, you're not funding all 43. That a lot of this money is reimbursed, and as Mr. Lehr talked, we are out there all the time looking for additional ways to pay for anything we can possibly have. I mean, sometimes I feel like the old nursery rhyme, Little Tommy Tucker, the guy that had to sing for his supper. If we don't bring in this money, we get punished. So, on the corrections side, we did just have 6 graduate from the Corrections Academy. We're sending 6 more in April. We are testing, we're in the process of testing, interviewing, and polygraphing, and we should be close to being at full staff within the next few weeks. Questions on that?
Anyone? Mr. Vickery?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. What's full staff at in numbers now, Sheriff?
For which side?
Corrections.
Corrections? We're still at 122, I believe.
And you're adding 6?
We just well, no, those 6 were part of that 122. The other 6 that are going are part of that 122. So we're still a good 8 or 10 away from being full staff.
And full staffing would be?
We're anticipating about 130, 135 tops, but we'll play that by ear as we get closer.
Mr. Snipes?
In their correctional training, are they going through the state of Illinois, or are they?
We're going through the training board. Yeah, the training board, state of Illinois.
The state of Illinois down in Springfield.
Yep.
Oh, okay.
It's not with state DOC. It's through the training board. It's correctional officer basic training.
Oh, okay.
DOC has their own.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Moving on, I mentioned at the finance committee about the Paylocity issues that we have, and I know we moved to Paylocity to save money. However, as I told the finance committee, I think saving money on the front end probably costs us money on the back end. Some of the issues that we have, and they're, I don't want to read them verbatim, but just as a synopsis, we have several issues with the system erasing our schedules. So we take time to enter the officers' schedules in the system, and for some unknown reason, it goes away. We have to re-enter them. Labor cost. There's no rhyme or reason for officers being credit for overtime. So if you clock in at a certain time, we have dedicated people that show up to work early. If they show up to work early, clock in. If they clock in at 6:15 and they're supposed to be here at 6:45, they get paid a half an hour overtime. We have to literally go in there and manually take that overtime out. When we do payroll, we have to keep track of the comp time because the system doesn't show us the actual balance. Our maximum by contract that correctional officers can earn is 90 hours. So we have to, based on the request slips that we get and the system itself, we have to manually do that. When payroll is submitted, the system's locked down. We're unable to do anything for 24 hours. And for some reason, when an officer that is assigned to the afternoon shift works overtime on the midnight shift, the system wants to pay them for 16 hours of overtime as opposed to 8 hours of overtime. So our guys are good, but let's face it, mistakes get made. We get in a hurry. We don't know since we've had this system how much overtime that we really paid that shouldn't have been paid. And that costs money. So as I told the finance committee, we have reached out to a couple other systems. The problem is the entire county is on Paylocity, so if we bring in another system, that may convolute it. It may create more work for Joanne, and that's certainly not what we want to do either. So we're trying to come up with some viable solution. I know that when we send these problems to Joanne, she notifies Paylocity, and they try to work through them. Some they can work through, some they can't. So we'll keep working on that, but I just want to make this committee aware.
Mrs. Evans?
Thank you. Silly question, but are they clocking in early out of necessity or just because they're here?
Because they get here.
Well, a lot of places, you don't clock in before that could solve that problem if they just waited until they were actually supposed to.
It could, but we don't, but see, it could be, we brief before every shift. So they need to be in their seats, ready to brief at 6:45, and I'm using day shift as an example. So if somebody's I mean, the time clock, might be 30 people waiting to go to work. So if everybody's standing around the time clock at 6:45 waiting to clock in, by the time everybody gets clocked in, you're already at 10 till. I mean, it's a system that, you know, why it pays automatic overtime for clocking in that early, I don't understand it. But I'm not familiar with the software, so I don't know.
Is this perhaps something we should move to executive committee, seeing that HR is covered under executive committee to bring
Yeah,
up?
you
Perhaps,
move
I
it,
mean,
yeah.
instead of here,
Yeah, we can talk about it anyway.
Maybe
We
that's-
see no difference. And maybe by that time we'll have some other examples and some other systems that maybe we can use. And it's difficult. I mean, don't get me wrong. It is difficult to find systems like this that work for 24-hour operations. I guess I would, you know, use Sandy or Tom or anybody else that works 8:30 to 4:30. If you work 8:30 to 4:30, you know, that's easy. It doesn't matter what, you know, if you clock in at, you know, that's easy to change. But when you've got a 24-hour operation, you're talking about 3 shifts of people doing this, and you know, certainly we encourage people to get here when they can, because one of the issues, the question's always asked, well, if they're here, are they on the clock? And my answer is no, they're not on the clock till their shift starts, even though they clocked in. But I can tell you, if something's hitting the fan in the back, the people that are here at 6:15 or 6:30 are going to respond, and then they're on the clock. So,
To add to what the sheriff's talking about, to find software, I've dealt with this specifically here at the county, is to find software that works specifically with the sheriff's office, and the highway has the same issue.
right.
All these grants that they're telling you about, everything has to be charged properly so it reports properly. So what would work in 95% of the other departments won't work in theirs. And that's been the problem over the 19 years I've been there. They have issues that other ones won't have because it has to get charged right, because they have other agencies they have to report back to of how the funds spent.
Right.
So it does make it very difficult. Software that you'd see other vendors have, they can't use because they have a more intricate internal operation.
yes, maybe
That's accurate. I mean, that's always been the case with whatever system we used. This one just seems to be, I mean, there was, I think the last one we were on was Time Force, and Time Force obviously didn't work completely for us, which, like you said, not many of them do, but it did work. It was better.
I'm not speaking for Paylocity. I'm just saying that I could see what what the sheriff's
yeah.
saying.
Oh, no,
This is what you
yeah,
run into.
It's the system it is. We understand the 24/7 thing. That's certainly,
I believe when they looked at Paylocity, like the sheriff said, they were looking more at financially, less on what they needed to have, and the sheriff may be coming back and saying this isn't doing what.
yeah.
we
Well, the
needed to do.
unfortunate part is it's costing us money on the back end. So the money we saved at the front end is long gone, and now it's just costing us money. So,
One last thing. I guess the end point would be is the sheriff has to find something that works for the sheriff's department and corrections. I'm asking, from having experience in this, I wasn't involved in the Paylocity, and I don't believe the finance department was involved when the Paylocity was in. Make sure, I don't need to be in that. You have Trent, and he can deal with that, but make sure when you do look at something else, you bring in the finance, because you may find something that handles laying out who works when, but if it doesn't report into the system and then that person finds out later, then you got a bigger problem.
right. I mean, our people, our officers are still clocking in. They're clocking in every day. So not only are they clocking in with Paylocity, they're clocking in on the time card, just so we have a backup in case it goes bad. So,
we make a motion to move this to executive. George?
Is there any system that you know of that could collect the information from the sheriff's department alone and then feed it into Paylocity so it's correct when it
that's
gets there?
probably going to be the most difficult. We have reached out to other sheriffs and other jails across the state and actually across the country to give us information on what time software they use. And we do have a number that we've reached out to. We have 2 of them that we've reached out to. and we are setting up a meeting to meet with them to discuss those options, and obviously that would be one of them, so that our information can go to Paylocity.
It's already correct before it gets to
Right,
Paylocity.
right.
So make a motion to move this subject to executive committee. Mr. Snipes, seconded by Mr. Lear. All in favor? Opposed?
Last thing I think on my agenda, vehicle request and maintenance update. We have been, I don't know that it's gone to all the committees and the board, but we have been authorized to lease 11 more cars this year. However, we were told to wait until the fourth quarter. If we order these cars in the fourth quarter, all likelihood they won't be on the road until April or May of 2019. And then not only will we waiting till April or May, we'll also be asking for 11 more cars, which will get our fleet up to date, up to that rotation where we can replace them where they're not out of warranty costing us money. As it is now in December and January, we spent close to $32,000 in repairs. And quite frankly, if you look at the lease paperwork, that is equal to a lease payment. So I would request this committee to maybe consider moving this up. We can move it to finance. I can get some price information and have all that information to the finance committee and start moving forward.
Do we do 11 at once, or is it possible to stagger it through the year?
Well, with the
vehicles
lease though,
ordered.
the problem with the lease is you're doing a couple different leases, and so.
Ms. Dunbar?
I'd make a motion that we move it to finance.
Motion. Second, Mr. Fairfield. All in favor? Opposed? Motion moves. Mr. Seroy.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Sheriff, when we bought the last new vehicles with the body style, did everything retrofit into
Yes.
from the old cars to the new cars, so that's not a problem?
Not an issue. That's the reason really we're staying with Tahoes as opposed to
Right.
Explorers, just because of that.
The cages and everything fit?
Yes. Yep. And I got a couple others, but there's nothing you have to take action on, just to let you know. Yesterday we had an issue with our Comcast bill not being paid. And that affects our video visitation, and it affects our phones next door. And if you've ever been around an inmate who is unable to get a visit when they're scheduled, that can be problematic for us. Fortunately, we got it taken care of fairly quickly, but this isn't the first time that our Comcast bill wasn't paid in a timely manner, and Comcast has shut us off. We really need to look at moving that Comcast bill to one of the priorities. Not only does it affect visitation and phones, from those visitations and phones, also we receive revenue for that too. So that ultimately ends up costing us money when visitations get canceled, things like that. So, and people can't use the phone. Mr. Gessner mentioned, or somebody did, about Oak Creek Estates and the Route 50 Motel. Some of you may know that at one point in time we had a contract to provide extra policing in those areas. The contract was with Oak Creek Estates, the Route 50 Motel, and Denny's. Each were paying a third of the cost. Oak Creek Estates got out because apparently they felt that they didn't need the extra policing in Oak Creek Estates. So the Route 50 Motel and Denny's were reluctant to pick up that extra cost. So we continue to work with them. We continue to work with the Route 50 Motel and Denny's to get them back on board. We don't know that Oak Creek Estates has any interest in doing that, and that's the old Birches, for those of you that don't know the area I'm talking about. Unfortunately, that is our jurisdiction. If anybody has any connection with Bradley or Bourbonnais and they would like to annex it, I would appreciate the help, and that would save us money.
There was just a shooting over there a couple weeks ago.
Yes, our guys did a great job on it. And there was actually, to add on to that, there's been a series of residential burglaries over in Oak Creek Estates. And the last one, our officers responded, and fortunately, we had a second car that had responded in a fairly timely manner. They were able to identify footprints leading from one trailer to another. They went to the trailer and actually made an arrest and got property back. So credit to them for spending time. Detective Brady in the back was a part of that. And so those are things that, you know, obviously help us, and having that extra manpower was a huge plus in helping us get to where we needed to be on that case. So, and that ultimately will probably lead to solving the other 3 or 4 that happened. So that's a good thing. The Bail Reform Act, I think Tom mentioned. I don't know that it's affected our population that much. The only problem is with bail reform, and we've said it from day one, is that in the past, when people posted bond, they had a reason to show up to court. Now, when they're getting released and they don't show up to court, they have no reason to show up to court because they didn't post any bond. That's going to be problematic. This is strictly a Cook County issue, and unfortunately, the rest of the state has to suffer because of Cook County. And it's, you know, we're not alone in this issue, but, you know, Cook County felt like people were being held longer than what they would have if they'd have pled guilty, which doesn't seem like a bail issue to me. It seems like a lawyer court system issue to me. But nonetheless, we have legislation from, once again, legislators who don't know what the hell they're talking about. So, warrant forgiveness. Jim Rowe mentioned warrant forgiveness. We did participate. We did offer to be part of it. We have over 5,000 warrants in Kankakee, of which 100 of them, although this was just misdemeanor only. One of the things that I would look for if I were you all is that the court dates that these guys were given under warrant forgiveness, if they don't show up on their next court date, I will guarantee you, I don't care if it's Wednesday or Sunday, they will be on warrant Wednesday or warrant Sunday or warrant Thursday. There, you know, the problem with warrants and the problem with our whole process is there has got to be some personal accountability from people. And people don't show up and they think, oh, it's okay, and we issue a warrant, and the clerk has to do work, and the state's attorney has to do work, and the public defender has to do work, sheriff's office does work. And then we go pick this guy up and they get released again, maybe even on a recog. And then we have to issue another warrant gets issued when they don't show up the next time. Personal accountability is something that, you know, we kind of lose track of, and it's frustrating to me, but I guess it's the system that we have. But I will guarantee you that when these people miss their next court date, they will be on warrant Saturday, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, whatever. So, and that's not a criticism of the deal, because it's a great deal. It helps people coming in, and they were glad to come in and get their warrant taken care of. But now it's their personal responsibility to show up next time. So, and the last thing I have, will end on a positive, because I always like to end on a positive. We received a letter, an email, that inmates actually pay money to send out. This inmate actually sent an email to one of our administrators. Actually, I take that back. He sent it to through the general email system that got to us, and it was dated January 26th of 2018. It's from a Cook County inmate who's in custody for murder. And I'll just read part of it. If possible, I would like for this to be forwarded to administration. First, I would like to apologize for this inquiry on such a short notice, albeit I fully understand if you're not able to assist. I will be parting ways with JCDC on February 1st, 2018. And this facility and all of its staff, I would sincerely like to thank you for your support, hospitality, care, and assistance, for your trust and generosity, also for not judging me and giving me the opportunity to help out and assist. During my tenure here, I was never treated unfairly, and therefore constantly given the chance to rehabilitate, learn, teach, and grow in all positive ways. So, credit to our entire staff. We don't get these very often. And for him to take the time to write that says a lot. I mean, we're all quick to criticize and complain, and believe me, we get our share of both over there. We get very few of these, but you know, when we get one, it always makes it worth doing what we do. And Again, it's a credit to the staff over there that do treat people with dignity and respect. And granted, we also treat them how they treat us, so, you know, sometimes that's not good, but, you know, that's part of the job. So, if there's no other questions, that's all I got.
Mr. Stauffenberg?
Thank you, Chairman. I'd also like to kind of end on a positive note, Sheriff. I was close to somebody, pretty close, that had a rural burglary happen to them. And he just wanted me to express how satisfied he was and how professional your team was during that situation.
You got a great group on both sides.
Yeah, you do.
Thank you.
Mr. Snipes?
I also want to leave on a positive note.
That's it.
Where are we with this vehicle request maintenance update? Did we do anything? I know y'all said y'all was gonna
It
bring
got
it.
moved to finance.
So they got, y'all did move to
yeah,
finance.
got moved to finance.
Just wanted to check, so that way I'm positively moving it in
Positive.
the right direction.
There you go.
There you go. Any old business before the committee? Any new business? I will make a motion to adjourn. Mr. Seroy, seconded by Mr. Snipes. All in favor? Opposed? Have a great day, everyone.